Today, I took the life of an elk. The elk sees its life flashing before its eyes. The lazy, hazy days of summer. The brief love affair with the bull during the breeding season. And the subsequent loneliness. The birth. And the joy at having passed on the genes. But also the restlessness. That unsettled force from which, for all I know, she may have considered it a relief to be delivered. What are you looking at? I'm hungry. There aren't any berries left. Yeah. I hack what I can into manageable sized pieces with the knife and carry them up to the tent. I collect the axe and go back to chop up the rest. By the evening, I've transported the whole animal up to the camp. I fry large chunks of meat on the fire and eat my fill for the first time in several weeks.
What we would like to propose that we do for Doppler is that without knowing for definite whether that we can do this, that we move gently towards the possibility of making some live performances happen in the last 2 weeks of August. We had been thinking about Doppler Ben had been thinking about it for several years and then sent me the book and I read it and went, oh, it's for us, and oh yeah, site specific, let's go with it. I think that was about a year or so ago, Ben.
2 years, almost today, yes. Yeah.
So we started beautifully, putting together a team and thinking that coming off the back of a number of really quite big shows and big locations with quite large teams, we thought, let's just take it all back to basics. The themes of the novel suggested that we could really bring things back to basics in a very beautiful, natural way, but also to do a small outdoor show for with a nice sized team and a tight, quite small audience. And wouldn't that be great? And a bit of a reward to us for having a couple of turbulent years of big shows and facing some unusual challenges. So that was great. That's what we finished. We finished our Christmas show at the Travers, which was a big multi-collaborator event, and thought, and now we will relax into 2020 and we will work with a lot of our favourite collaborators and it'll be gentle and beautiful. And then in August, we'll spend a bucolic month in the woods. And obviously things didn't quite turn out like that. But I think because of the size, the containable nature of the show, because it was outside, we felt that it was still going to be possible.
I guess I first heard about the Doppler project 2 days, in fact, after we had all worked together to announce the cancellation of the August festivals as they had previously been known. Obviously, some of them came back in digital format, but there were going to be no live in-person August festivals, which was quite a wrench for everybody. And it was amazing 2 days later to have Jude's email ping into my mailbox to kind of say how Gridiron were absolutely determined to bring something back, and had been working on a site-specific piece, obviously, but an outdoor piece that might be able to be adapted to the social distancing regulations. So that was a little candle of hope in a pretty dark time.
You know, by about April or May or the end of May, we were beginning to know that being outside in outdoor locations was much less risky than doing anything indoors, as far as COVID's concerned. And so as soon as I knew that, really, I mean, who was I going to think of but Gridiron?
We've had quite a few phone calls, you know, along the lines of how on earth, how do we do it? You know, how do we, and a bit of consultancy here and there. And I think I think of all companies, certainly in Scotland, I think we were very well prepared, and just in terms of the accident of our history.
So the process kind of started with them saying, right, we need to go and come back with a plan of how we do this in a way that is safe for everybody and that artistically has also an integrity. So off they went, did incredible work, and came back with an amazing plan that got put to us. So everyone was clear and everyone was agreeing with it. And you know, they did such a brilliant job with it that everyone was like, yeah, I feel absolutely safe to go into rehearsals.
But a huge part of that process was we also consulted with our audience, and we did that through our mailing list, because we knew that those are people that have a background knowledge of the way that we work, the way we approach things, how we approach looking after an audience and our people. But we needed to find out if from the get-go there was any point and if it was responsible for us to think about even trying to put any performances on, even as far away as August. We got some really great, useful feedback from our audience, but it was really nice to let them know we were thinking of them and feel part of our overall planning.
We always knew that regardless of what happened, we would try something, whether or not it would be successful, see the light of day. And so I think it was a good sort of like buoyant sea of positivity to try and hold on to it and go, right, let's do something with this. But there's also a frustration because you don't know, it's compromised because it's constantly compromised, and it's things that are out of your control. You know, there's a global pandemic, which you can't go, well, actually, we can solve that. You can't solve that. You can only adapt. You're always going to be battling against, virtual reality, cinema, TV screens, laptops. It's just another thing that they're going to throw at you. Pandemic's nothing. This morning I woke and heard the elk calf outside my tent. Hardly dare get up. Can't look him in the eye. He's trying to psych me out. I can't take this anymore. I'm going for a piss. Okay, for Christ's sake. Here, have an eyeful. Huh? Have you seen enough? Satisfied? Now piss off! Look, I might as well give it to you straight. I have a big member. What can I say? I have a remarkable, indeed an extremely large organ. In short, a gigantic chopper. It's long, heavy, fat. At school they called me Chopper Doppler. It was upsetting. After all, I did have other qualities I wanted people to see. Chopper Doppler. It's very annoying to be reminded of it. That bloody elk. If it comes back, I'll split its skull open. Get! Ah! 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 can't. Look, we can't go on like this. I'm sorry for killing your mother. You don't have to be scared anymore. Come and go as you please. Humans have hunted elk for thousands of years. If the elk stock had been allowed to multiply uncurbed, it would have catastrophic consequences. When there are too many elk, then you get diseases, mental as well as physical. And what you end up with is a really unpleasant atmosphere in the forest. I want you to know that I'm ready to support you through these difficult times. Your mother would soon have brutally broken the ties between you two in any case. Because that's the way the elk are. You treat your kids like shit. You've been spared that experience because I did her in. You'll remember her now as someone who was always there for you and who was suddenly and meaninglessly whisked away. You've lost your mother. I lost my father. Yeah, died in May. We're in the same boat. So instead of directing your anger at me, you should be directing it at Herr Dusseldorf down in Planet Vian. For a long time, I had easy access to food in his cellar. Very free and easy with locks on his doors. It's Norway. But then he must have changed his mind about our arrangement. One day, back door was locked. Signs and stickers everywhere about alarms, security guards, crime and punishment. That's what the world has come to. People brick themselves up and they're scared of each other. In the end, I could see no other way out. I had to lure your mother into an ambush and... Yesterday, I took the life of an elk.
I was really dreading the Zoom rehearsals. I'm a bit of a technophobe. I don't like staring at screens. But I thought the first week would be fine because it's just table read. It's just around the table. That's just as almost as good as being in a room for people. We took there was a scary moment when I woke up thinking, oh God, I hope Jude doesn't think we're going to be doing 7 hours on Zoom rehearsals. And I think, Jude, you had exactly the same thoughts.
It was very weird. To be honest with you, it was quite strange.
There's a wee delay. You're like, who am I talking to? Oh, I'm talking to you. But then you look at them at their eyes, but they're looking up at the camera, and you're like, oh, are they looking at me? They're looking up there. I'm looking up there. If I look there, they'll make it look like I'm looking at. You're got to think it's technology.
We went into the second week. We kind of tried to get on our feet and move about, and that had its complications, restrictions, challenges. Some people have bigger sitting rooms than others. Once we started moving about, it just became second nature. We just adapted to the situation.
Everyone was kind of really embracing these and throwing themselves into it. So, there was lots of playfulness, using Zoom as well, and just using that kind of like coming close and to the camera and disappearing from the frame, and just kind of like general playfulness. I think that as actors we normally have, everyone was able to bring that into that setup as well.
So everyone got a sense of what it could be, and it was, it was quite an emotional experience actually. How brilliant they were adapting to the form. Well, just to say one thing, which is that let's be clear, there are no benefits of rehearsing on Zoom. Let's make that really clear. I don't want to rehearse on Zoom again once we're out of this. We used it as a platform to allow us to function.
Suddenly there was just forest. No children's TV. For the first time in years, everything was so quiet. I'm not thinking about the bathroom. All of a sudden, for the first time, I'm not thinking about whether I should have Italian tiles or Spanish ones or matte or gloss or glass mosaic, which of course my wife is really keen on. We started discussing the bathtub the day the US and the UK began their campaign in Iraq, and we were very annoyed because they were distracting us from our bathroom design project. Now just the spring sun warming my face. My father had died very suddenly in the middle of the night. I never knew him. Didn't feel anything special when my mother told me he was dead. In the heather, on that warm spring day, a realization. You're here, and then you're not.
Where are you?
Hello, darling.
It's an hour past dinner. Gregor is in bed already.
Falling off my bike. Couldn't move for a bit there. Caught my hip on a tree stump.
Okay, what time will you be home?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
I've been thinking a bit.
And?
I think
Yes?
things need to change around here.
Well, it's a good job we're doing a show about someone who wants to get as far away from other people as possible. That's useful. So yeah, so I've worked through the script, and I mean there are a few moments, as you know, where it's indicated that people are closer. So, for example, I mean, one example would be the stabbing of the elk. I think the way to go for now is almost like a split screen approach, which I'm sure we've all probably done, or at least seen in theatre before. So that, for example, the elk is kind of dying at one side of the playing area and reacting to what Keith is doing on the other side of the playing area, but the two actions are split, if that makes sense.
We can't go on like this. Can't keep living just off your mother. You will have to wait here, and I'll go down to the city. Huh? I'll only be a short while. Get some supplies. No. You can't come with me. I'll only be a couple of hours, and then we can do something nice together. Wait. Come on. Come on. You think I'm going to abandon you? But I won't.
Norway's favorite supermarket.
I'm not sure. Help a poor hunter-gatherer,
It's not standard practice.
Here, it's a simple deal. Fresh elk meat in exchange for milk and a few other items from your rich assortment.
I'm really not sure.
I know most people think this kind of economy is a throwback, but it's an excellent system. You barter, you do things for other people. If you go along with this, you can boast later that you were a trendsetter. 10 years from now, bartering will be the norm. It's obvious. Things can't keep going the way they are now. I notice you haven't said no.
What are you after?
The most important thing is to set up a milk deal.
A milk deal?
Yes. That is my organs and cells. In short, my body require a good litre of skimmed milk a day. Therefore, I would like to find every Monday and Thursday morning when the store opens at 7, 4 cartons of skimmed milk placed outside the storeroom. For example, between the waste skip and the wall.
Why skimmed milk?
Skimmed milk represents the peak of a human achievement to date. Any idiot has always been able to get hold of ordinary cow milk.
How many weeks is this supposed to go on for?
As many as is necessary. You can have the meat I have here with me today. And if the deal continues after Christmas, you'll get more.
Done. But let's keep this between you and me, eh?
This is a victory for the hunter-gatherer culture.
A trendsetter.
The production moved into a private garden in Edinburgh, and which was fantastic space, and they were absolutely brilliant, Gridiron, in terms of sort of like delivering the protocol that was necessary. Over and above, I would say, like, you know, just to ensure the priority being everyone's safety.
Outdoor rehearsals were great because we're so used to working with unpredictability, especially in site specific. I think we did well. We thrived in it because we went back to our knowledge, to our skill set, and we thought, right, well, this is the problem. How can we fix it? And we used to try and think outside the box.
It was unusual. It definitely was unusual. But given the nature of site-specific stuff, or certainly the way I work, is to over-prepare and prepare for constant curveballs in many ways.
Okay, so for tomorrow, for instance, the 3 apps I'm using, 2 of them say it'll be mostly dry, but it'll rain between 2 and 3. And one of them, the other one, says it'll be dry from 2.
The weird bit was not to be able to get close to your workmates. I mean, even in a scene, you know. Keith Fleming had a name for me. 2 centimeters Moreno, I think he was calling me. Because allegedly I wasn't very good at keeping 2 meters apart from people. Now, I totally dispute that. I think I was doing a sterling job. But yeah, Cara Jackson, who's our stage manager, was always looking at me like,
That was hard though, because the natural intention when you're rehearsing is to get close.
That slightly awkward distance away where it makes it feel more like how you would speak to a stranger rather than how you would speak to someone that you're supposed to be having a working relationship with. Like, I'm sitting behind a table, as you've seen, and it's like it's pretty much exactly the same. The only real difference is that the actors don't get to come and play with the sound props, which you know, then I know where everything is, so it's maybe not such a bad thing.
I found it really, really difficult coming to the rehearsal space, it being outdoors, and not being able to talk properly to people. We'd really noticed how much we missed all those little tiny moments of intimacy that happen that make the world of difference to a show.
We had our challenges as well because we're right next to a railway line. So every, like, I think 8.5 minutes we'd hear the sort of like 10:32 would start, you know, it would come back. But again, you know, we just worked with it, you know.
Just joyous to go to work and physically interact and practice your skills, you know, because that was a fear. But certainly by about May, it's like, are any of us ever going to be able to actually practice thing that we do. And it's like training the body. You get the muscles gets the theatre muscles get slack if you don't practice them.
I've asked them that we would need to know from them two things. What's the likelihood of them granting permission for performances from the 24th, even if Nicola says it's all right? And even if they can't give us that permission until after the announcement on the 20th, could they give us permission to start working on site from the date we discussed, which would be the 12th? So we'll just wait and see what they say about that. If it's a hard no, I think obviously we're probably looking at going to our plan B, which we have discussed amongst Ben and Ellie and Elle and Roy, that plan B is very probably that we just move to film.
I have a daughter, Nora. Nora is 12. I feel about 1,000,000 miles away from her. This is an example of a typical conversation between the two of us.
I think it's rubbish you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. I've seen it 11 times.
I agree to watch the film with my daughter. Maybe if we watch it together, we'll feel closer. It lasts about 1,000 years.
So, what do you think, Papa? Huh?
Well, it'll be quite some time before Saruman decides to build another tower at the foot of a dam. What's up?
I'm shocked that your first comment after seeing an epic like that could be so cynical.
What did you want me to say?
We've seen a tale about good and evil. Do you feel nothing in your heart?
We've seen an unusually expensive film about trolls. He was done well, though, wasn't he? The transparent one that eats the fish.
Gollum!
Gollum!
Do you know what your problem is, Papa?
No. What?
You don't like people. That's why I don't like you.
Yesterday was a shit day. Consequently, I had a bit of a hangover this morning, but we're all good now. I've also had a conversation with licensing, though, because the main thing is always, apart from the fact that it's a bit of a pain in the hoop for us all not knowing exactly what we're going to do, at least we can carry on. But if we run out of time to apply for a license, we're scuppered.
On Thursday, I was down at the waste skip, picking up my milk deal. And who should I bump into but my wife, of all people?
I'm pregnant.
Really? Again? But we've barely had any sex since I moved up to the tent, maybe 2 or 3 times. My wife comes up to the tent once a month for sex.
Due in May. And if you're not back home by then, you can forget the whole thing. Then it's over, got it?
I hear what you're saying.
And I'm sick of being alone with the kids and not having your income anymore.
I understand that too, but I don't live in the forest for fun. I live in the forest because I have to be in the forest. And you don't have the wherewithal to understand that because you've never felt that you have to be in the forest.
You're getting to be just like your father. May, Andreas. May.
I play lotto with the elk calf. I give him a fair chance. I pick animal lotto. But he's hopeless. Doesn't match a single pair. You're not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but you're a good friend and a lovely pillow. I've been thinking a lot about my father. I never knew him. Amongst these papers, I found hundreds of pictures of toilets. Yeah? Extraordinary thing. Seems he was in the habit of taking pictures of toilets in the final years of his life. And not just toilets. Anywhere you could take a piss. Rocks, tracks, for example. In a way, it was those pictures of toilets which encouraged me to leave for the forest. Getting used to the solitude. Learning to live with it. Just like my father did. He was completely alone. You know, we're born alone and we die alone. I mean, you can live with somebody, but with generally means next to. I decided to call the elk calf Bongo after my father. Not that my father was called Bongo. Sometimes you have to be open to associations of this kind.
We started having those conversations, which you do, which is costume, props, and we just came up with this idea, talking to Ben one day, saying, right, well, rather than going and buying stuff, why don't we have a props meeting online? We can see what people have got. And actually, I think it's something that I will take forward into other productions from now on, because it was the most fun. What do we have that we could act as a tranquilizer gun? And Ben would run away and come back with a gun that was his son's when he was 14 and was a massive big plastic thing. And will this work? And we'd go, perfect, great. Or another cast member would come and bring something else. And, you know, we pretty much managed to prop the whole show through that process. And that then followed on to have that, let's do this for costume. So, you know, I had mood boards and ideas of what the characters would wear. And again, we had that conversation because we knew we couldn't do any intermediate fittings. That wouldn't work. So it had to be that they tried on the clothes themselves, and that's how it would work. And again, that worked really well. And then everything obviously just had to go into isolation. So if things were loaned or borrowed, it went into isolation 48 hours, then went on the clean tables. We had the dirty table and the clean table for props. Once it was clean, the actor could try it on. If it worked, they kept it with them in their person. And that worked really well.
It's December now. Milk deal continues splendidly. But there's one thing that I miss. Ever since the blueberry season finished, which was over a month ago. Sugar. I've become a slave to sugar. Can't stop thinking about it. Dusseldorf. I know for a fact Dusseldorf keeps chocolate in his house. He's mad about this stuff. I awake to an amazing sight. Indeed, one that borders on the shocking. Dusseldorf's entire sitting room is a battlefield. A model town spanning some 50 to 60 square meters, with a richness of intricate detail that approaches joyous insanity. Must have taken years to build. All the visible infrastructure of a real town, hundreds of vehicles, thousands of soldiers. What are you making? What are you making?
I assume it was you who stole the jam and meat from the cellar.
I'm afraid it was. I did take a few bits and pieces one time, but I've stopped now.
You stopped because I had an alarm fitted.
You might be right about that.
And now you've started again.
Sugar. Oh, I must have sugar.
Toblerone, having its own triangular chocolate. That's Toblerone. Make a triangular round from triangular trees to triangular.
So, you make models, do you?
Yes, I make models.
What are you making?
I'm making a German Steer, type 1500 A01.
I see.
The Germans were good during the first phase of the war. Part of the reason for that was that they had good equipment.
But as far as I can remember, they didn't do so well in the second part of the war.
No, they didn't. But things went well at first. They had good vehicles. The model I'm making was manufactured in Austria and was available in 5 different weight categories. 4-wheel drive, 3.5-litre V8 engine, 85 horsepower.
Why are you making that particular one?
It's the Ardennes Offensive, December 1944. Christmas Eve that year, to be more precise. The town's called Bastogne. My father died there that day. He was shot, driving a car like this. It was 2:20 in the afternoon.
I'm sorry to hear that.
2:20? What sort of a time is that to die? What sort of a bloody time is that?
Perhaps it doesn't matter.
I think you're mistaken.
Okay. My father's dead too, by the way. He died this spring.
I'm sad to hear that. Was he a good man?
I don't know. He photographed toilets in the final years of his life. I don't know if that's good or not.
I think it sounds good. My father was stationed in Norway during the first part of the war. He met my mother and went for clandestine walks in the forest and got her pregnant. Afterwards, he was ordered home and in late autumn 1944 sent to Belgium. He had originally come from Dusseldorf, and after the Norwegian authorities had taken a softer legal line with names a few years back, well, I decided to take the town as my name. I'm proud to be the son of a German soldier. I have no reason to believe he was worse than any other soldier. And since I never met him, well, I'll honor him. That's why I'm building this scene. You see, I found a letter from one of his subordinates saying that he was dead and how it had happened. I've often thought that when this officer's car is finished, and I've made and painted my father, I'll put them on the correct spot in my model, and then shoot myself through the head. And sometimes I think I'll do that right here at home, and sometimes I incline towards going to Bastogne and doing it on the actual spot where he died. This is the spot. Something puts me off the whole idea. It's sentimental and unoriginal. I'll have to see. And what about you?
I'm all right, thanks. Things are going really well. I live in the forest with an elk. Not far from here. Got a tent.
May I ask why you live in the forest?
I don't like people.
Nothing you can say to that. Dusseldorf?
Doppler.
Doppler is a character that self-isolates because he is done with the whole situation around him. He's bored of his life and he's bored of the society he lives in, and he feels disconnected.
Yeah, it's a much more privileged isolation that he's having, where he's just decided to go and hide in the forest from his wife and his kids. But
yeah, I mean, it's strange because a lot of people did say to me, "Oh, have they picked that because of lockdown?" And you go, "No, it was already in the mindset for years."
I mean, there is a kind of intertwining, crossover there of the themes, and a bit more respect for nature, getting back to sort of like basics, getting in touch with the world around us, which I think, we're hugely losing.
His aim in the book and in obviously the adaptation is to do nothing, to slow down and to listen. When he falls off his bike and he's looking up to the forest canopy, it's a kind of joyous reconnection with the natural world, which was certainly true in lockdown. I remember seeing those satellite images of China where all the pollution just vanished, and it didn't take long.
It certainly struck a chord, or certain aspects of it did. Some of it was just completely batshit, but
And what's really interesting as well is during lockdown, just how much, retail giants like Amazon and stuff have benefited from it. And there's been this, I don't know if it's just my community, but it feels like a real push about shopping locally. And it's a thing we see with Doppler, particularly with the elk meat and the bartering and the shopping locally. And I think it was interesting timing to have this story happening during lockdown as well.
It's quite funny that we were rehearsing a play about someone who wanted to run away in order to reconnect. And I think ironically is where we are at the moment. We are all desperate to reconnect, and now we can't because of this threat that we have around us. And I really hope that when we finally can, and I do believe we will, we are gonna go for it big time, and really, really, really hold each other, because we're gonna need to be held, after this. It's a global trauma.
bit of luck, we might be a wee bit further forward by this time next week. Yeah. Please God, I mean, we'll see. It's a lot of it's just out with our control. So thank you for being patient and sticking with us. Yeah.
So we figured all that out, and we were ready to go, sitting there ready to go. And we got the phone call, unfortunately, that the show had been pulled.
And the fact that it really was the very, very last minute that we had to make the decision that we couldn't do the live shows was really hard. And I can't thank our team enough for their absolute patience and their faith in us that we were going to do the right thing and make the right decisions.
Obviously, we were going to make this work one way or another, no matter what.
So we ended up going down to Gifford Woods and creating a film of the work, which was a whole new set of challenges.
So I thought it'd be good to start off with the rough plan at the moment, and it's so nice to say that this is the plan, not maybe or anything else. So hallelujah for that.
Well, I had to do a crash course in how to write a shooting script. I learned things like it's not voiceover, it's SO. No, sorry, no, I'm still not going to write OS off screen. You know, for a.
I what that was, but I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to seem stupid.
I think there's a danger for us theatre makers turning ourselves into amateur filmmakers, and I think a little bit of modesty is quite useful to bear that in mind, rather than us all leaping in there and go, "Oh, I'm going to make a film now." You know, so it has to be collaborative in that way, which luckily in this experience it was.
And then we arrived down into beautiful, glorious sunny weather, and we did a day of orientation of rehearsal in the Woodland Bend, and it was gorgeous. And
Very well.
and everything was gorgeous. And then we're going up Storm Francis. It might miss us. No, it was about 11 o'clock that night, and we kind of looked out the window of the hotel we were staying in, and the heavens had opened.
So everyone on this call, if you've not got waterproof trousers, I would strongly recommend you go and purchase some for crew particularly.
And then as soon as we went to film it, pissed rain. Which is like, yeah, and it's a cliched joke to sort of say, yeah, Scottish summer, but yeah, we did get it.
I learned a lot about the weather. I thought I knew a lot about working outside and working in the weather, but it turns out that the thing that is most difficult about rain isn't necessarily getting wet. That's hard and it's uncomfortable, and it wasn't easy for, you know, the camera, for Andrew, our camera guy. It wasn't easy for photographers, and, you know, and it's just not pleasant. But the noise is so stressful.
Ultimately, it couldn't be captured in the space because it was so rainy that, like, but the kind of like subtle sound effects just have like full on rain behind them, like, and like that's pleasant for some of it, but you don't want it to feel as if it's pissing of rain the whole way through the summer.
It's very definitely not the show people would be coming to see next year. It's the work that we've done this year to do a COVID-19 response show, but giving a good sense of the sort of the content.
I think we've got probably about half, probably not quite half actually, but more than a third of the show, which I think in reflection is actually perhaps was always meant to be. And then it does become we're not saying we've completed the project. The completion of the project is live next summer.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, this is Bongo. True, he's an elk, but he's a good friend of mine, and therefore, friend of yours too.
I did kind of want to talk about what hand sanitizer does to puppets.
Yeah.
Just because because I mean, that was a massive learning thing, wasn't it? And Fergus was like, I need to tell everybody I know. So Fergus, our puppet designer, when he made all these beautiful puppets, and then the next morning after the first day that they'd been used in person rehearsals, they had melted. And it was because of the alcohol and the hand sanitizer, which of course we should have all worked out. But when you're using something every day and it becomes just part of what you need to do, and then the puppets were having to be cleaned. So it was just like, oh my God, this is every single part of everything that we're doing is being affected by the pandemic, by what we need to do. Even our little puppets, even our little man on a bike has melted.
Morning. You know you can't have a tent up for more than 3 nights in the same place.
I know.
Well, I suspect this tent has been here much longer.
Maybe. And while we're at it, I'd appreciate if you didn't walk by here again.
Oh, you have no right to stop me.
Of course. But I'd just like to point out that I'd appreciate it if you took another route the next time you went out walking.
Well, I'm quite sure I'll pass this way again. And I've made a note of today's date. I am going to ring Lovenskjold if the tent's still here in 2 days' time.
Lovenskjold?
The owner of this forest.
And I suppose this Lovenskjold's a friend of yours?
Well, yes, fancy that.
But who can own the trees and the forest and the air that we breathe? Surely I, as a citizen of this country, should be able to linger in the forest if I so wish.
Not in this forest. It belongs to Lovenskjold.
I see. You're a true guardian of the status quo. Whereas I'm an enemy of the people. You want to conserve tradition, I want to tear it down. You have a dog, I have an elk. You want to buy, I want to barter. There you have some of the differences between us in a nutshell. And you can come here with your dog and kick up a stink. But I want you to know that I don't like your way of thinking. I don't like your clothes. I don't like your dog. And least of all, I don't like that self-satisfied smirk of yours. It's the kind of smirk that only immense material security and prolonged right-wing voting can produce. And I can't stand it. Now clear off.
This is not the last word in the matter. I am going to check if the tent's still here in a couple of days.
Oh, I'm scared. Ah!
I think that I think there's a real danger of theatre becoming like more elitist than it already is. Like if audiences end up having to be smaller, then ticket prices will increase, and like it'll just become even more of a kind of like a plaything for the upper middle class, I guess.
And that's just down to like brilliant people not going to drama school because it's going to cost them £27,000. So they don't get through the system and they don't get onto our stages.
Is this reset, as they're calling it, just going to push it back further to being the preserve of those with money, which does seem to happen every so often in the arts? It moves one way and then shoves itself straight back.
The reality of it is that the people that make this very successful industry, generate all this profit, are people who very often work in terrible conditions and get paid very little and are actually not recognized at all in society.
Fundamentally, what needs to happen is we need investment, to keep theatre and the arts alive.
And when we were in lockdown, again, when people were isolated and worried and terrified, and they went to the arts for entertainment, for inspiration, for peace of mind. Everyone has been reading, listening to music, watching films, watching theatre.
What I'm personally very worried about is losing the talents we have in production that just are not realised.
And I'm worried about them going, actually, I could form a life, a slightly more predictable life where I know I'm going to be able to pay my mortgage at the end of the month. rather than return to the job where I'm working for 2 months and then I'm off for 6 and I don't necessarily know what my income is going to be.
You know, if we're asking what is the future of theatre in Scotland, well, it's only as good as the talent that works in it. So, you know, that's obviously something that we've got to cherish and look after to the max.
I think there is this belief that art will be better if there is difficulty, that we thrive from challenge and that we thrive from adversity, and out of great difficulty come brilliant murals and fabulous theatre pieces. Yeah, that absolutely can happen, but people need to eat, they need to have security, they need to know they can clothe and educate their children, they need to, you know, happiness comes from security, and great art comes from happiness.
Oh, looks like it's taking its time.
The problem is more that it doesn't take enough time. When I'm finished, I can't be with my father anymore. So actually, I don't want to finish.
Perhaps you're investing too much of yourself in this. After all, this is just plastic models we're talking about here.
I am not investing too much of myself into it. Quite the opposite. I'm investing the exact significance and gravity it deserves. It is you who are not investing enough into it.
Possibly.
And it's not just plastic models. We're talking about the biggest war the world has ever seen. We're talking about tens of millions of dead. And even more with permanent injuries, myself included. About Europe. Poor Europe. And about large parts of the rest of the world. Poor rest of the world. About my father. I've decided he should be smiling because he's thinking about his son. In other words, me. As the sniper fires, he should be sitting in the car and looking forward to seeing me.
I see, that sounds like a good idea.
I'm not sure that it is a good idea. But that's the way it's going to be anyway.
The digital theatre is not the future of theatre, it's a future of theatre.
Me personally, I wouldn't write it off at all. I think it's a very interesting thing to explore, and I don't think it's something that is here to substitute anything else, but to add to what we can create as makers.
It's quite a different physical experience. You know, the space you're in is quite different, and whether that's, you know, sitting in a seat in a theatre or a site specific thing, I guess there's a question about, is your living room now the place that is temporarily a theatre in the same way as other spaces are temporarily a theatre?
Yeah, the digital theatre stuff, it's good. It's a good replacement, but to me, it feels like a stopgap.
I think most people would agree that nothing can replace live performance. Nothing can replace that experience of, you know, the shared experience of being in the same space, sharing the same breath.
It's the connection between embodied human beings. You know, it's the fact that it can be different every time, and that you are part of the experience, that as an audience member, you are feeding the performers, and the performers are responding to your emotion, you know.
In fact, the people that were performing were sharing the space and time with the audience that were that day when the thing got filmed. So suddenly I don't feel part of that experience.
Sometimes my reaction to seeing that work has just been, oh my God, I wish I could have seen that, which is a really weird thing to say when you've just seen a thing. I wish I could have seen that. What you mean is, I wish I could have seen that live.
Can't see the audience's faces. And that's exactly the opposite of what, I mean, we use the audience, as you know, as we cast the audience as the reason they're there. We use them as props, and we get them to help us make the show. I think, and that's so lost in the COVID time.
A message from your wife. She expects Gregis and you to be back down in Oslo by mid-April, which she means the 15th. That's when she's due. And by that time, this farce will have been going on for long enough. See, my sister is not the kind you can just marry and do a runner when you feel like it. Other people's sisters, maybe, but not mine. And if you're not there, I'll come and get you.
No problem. What a pleasant exchange. The reason for this is that I'm lying. But he doesn't know that. A lie is a splendid device, far too seldom used. It's incredibly effective. You say one thing, and you mean something completely different. It's fantastic.
Why did you do that, Papa?
Do what?
You did this with your finger.
Oh, I had a midge in my eye.
But there aren't any midges here.
Okay, I did it because I think that Uncle Tom is a bit of a drag.
Got a nice cabin, though.
True enough. He's got a nice cabin.
I think it's also leadership, and that's one of the things that Gridiron really demonstrated here. Actually, it was really brave leadership in saying, let's go for this. We don't know if it's going to quite work out. We don't know if it's going to happen, but we're going to go for it.
It's a positivity. I think it needs positivity. It needs people that are, invested in it. They're invested in the product. They're invested in the people. That's one thing. Gridiron, they're invested in the artists. They're invested in the crew. They always look after you.
Nobody can accuse us of not giving it our very best shot.
That is true, absolutely.
I think Site Specific has a much higher profile and a much bigger opportunity going forward than maybe it had before.
There will be an increased demand for theatre shows that don't throw people into huge proximity indoors. So I think actually outdoor events, kind of walking events, promenade events will be very, very popular.
As a nation and as a human race, we have always, since the start of time, been fascinated by storytelling. Whether it's round a campfire, whether it's in a building, whether it's in a forest.
And wherever there are humans, there will be some sort of artistic expression. You can't separate it.
I think there's going to be amazing stuff happening because of the people who are making it.
And also, I think it might feel a bit like it must have felt in the Restoration when Cromwell closed all the theatres for 10 years. What kind of theatre came back? Well, it was very raunchy. It was all those comedies about bed hopping and stuff. Complete celebration of the body. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that is a thing that a lot of people would want to see. Certainly what I would like to see as a punter.
Yes. Well, I will be looking forward to that then.
The swish of the curtain will return.
I don't like people, I don't like people, I don't. But then I've only met Norwegians, I need to meet others. I am always alone. Like elk, like father, onwards and upwards, unless I want to drown in my own emptiness. This is a military campaign. I have to raise my sights. This world needs help from a hunter, help from a gatherer like me. We are going east. We are gonna hunt. We are gonna gather. Make our way onto the others. Might not like them any better. We shall see. military campaign. I have to raise my sights. This is a war against smartness, a war against stupidity. We are gonna fight. We'll fight until the last man. We'll fight until it's over. It's war out there. This is a military campaign.
My roles in Doppler were Dusseldorf, elderly gentleman, also the supermarket manager, the posh parent, Gregis, Doppler's 4-year-old son, and the mother elf. Diversity.
I played many characters. Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, and Nora, of course, Doppler's daughter. That's terrible. I forgot.
Growing mountain of PPE in our room. Look.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So if things don't go ahead, you're all going to know where to come to for your safety equipment.
It's quite a frightening thing, to be honest. You know, I don't know. I'm part of it. I'm part of the things of going like, fuck. I don't know. You know, where's my next job going to come from? I don't know. I mean, everyone's become a voiceover. Everyone's set up a voice studio like, hello, 1 2 1 2.
And as always, it's always nice to find out that the main thing that anyone is obsessed about or worried about, even in the midst of a global pandemic, is how am I going to go to the toilet?
When Bing wanted the whole team to march to the final music, and I think like the production team, like Ben's like, do you think you guys could march? And like we hadn't rehearsed, we hadn't discussed it, and all of us collectively, no. It was like echoing through the woods, and it was so funny. It was like, there we go, there's the theatre, guys. Like you can push it so far, but that's the line.
Next,
Ben, I think you're muted.
The quote of 2020. You're on mute.